In today's video, we're going to make stuffed mushrooms. Some people say life is too short to stuff a mushroom. I would say the opposite. I would say that life is so short, why would you get to the end of your life without making stuffed mushrooms? They are absolutely fantastic. I made the mistake of mentioning them in passing in a video the other day, and you all said, please give me the recipe, Michelle. As I said in that video, I don't use a recipe, but what I've done is I've made you a sort of build your own adventure stuffed mushroom. So we're going to make our own stuffed mushroom adventure. So I'm going to give you the basic things that you need to add, and then I'm going to give you lots of options, and I'll put them all in the video description as well. Forgive the lighting in this video. I know it's awful. It gets dark at 4 p.m. here in the UK, and I need new film lights. Can't afford them, but that's not going to stop us from making stuffed mushrooms together. So I'm going to make 2 mushrooms today because I'm going to have them for my dinner. Now, don't ask me which particular species of mushrooms these are, because we have these in all of our supermarkets in the UK. They normally come in packs of 4. And you'll want about 2 per person or more if you have a larger appetite. Now, all we're going to do is just cut the very ends off as they can be a little bit dry. I'm also going to take the stalk out, but we're going to use the stalk as part of the stuffing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut, and I'm sort of curving the knife downwards, but being careful not to go through both sides, or through the other side, I should say. We don't want to cut right through the mushroom. So I'm just going to do this, give it a little twist, and then lift it off, and we can set this aside. It'll be our first ingredient in the stuffed mushroom. Now, these need cleaning. You can brush them, but what I like to do is put them under the tap. However, it's important that you keep them that way up, so I'm just going to put it under the tap and just agitate any dirt to remove it, and just check there's none around the edges. Don't allow water to get into the gills here, because your mushroom will go pretty soggy. They tend to release a lot of water as they cook anyway. So we're going to clean this, but without getting this inside part wet. So I've cleaned my mushrooms and given them a little bit of a dry. Now, I've got them on this tray, and I've just cut a new piece of this magic non-stick liner. So not sponsored, but I get this stuff from Lakeland, and you literally cut it to size. I do a lot of things that I cook without oil. I've got a recipe, for example, for oil-free chips. That's fries if you're in America. Let me know if you want that one. And anything that tends to stick, not that the mushrooms will stick any more than anything else, but anything that tends to stick, these reusable liners are amazing. So this one's brand new. Here's one that I ruined earlier. So this is one that's in my larger trays, and you know, I've been using this for about 2 years, and it gets marked, and you know, sometimes you get little cuts in it and things, but just wash them in the sink and reuse them. They're fantastic. The only other thing I'm going to do before I stuff these is just put a little bit of oil on the outside of them, just stop them from drying and shriveling up as they cook. I'm actually doing these in advance today, so they're going to sit in my fridge for a few hours before I cook them, because this will be something I eat after I get home from my Tai Chi class, which goes on ridiculously late. So I'll be cooking these about 10 p.m. And I'm using a cold pressed rapeseed oil here. You could use an avocado oil or a sunflower oil. Only need a little bit. We're going to set those aside until we're ready to put the stuffing in. I'm going to pop them in the fridge, and now we'll make the filling. So the first ingredient that is going in is my mushroom stalks. Now, there's quite generous amount of stalks here, but often there's next to nothing. But you know, we're just putting them in because why not use them? And if you're the sort of person that always peels your mushrooms, you might want to consider that you could be a psychopath. I'm joking, of course, but why are you peeling mushrooms? All the flavour and the goodness is in the skins. There is absolutely no reason to peel them. Just brush, wipe, or rinse the dirt off, and you're all ready to go. So we'll start with our mushroom stalks. Remember, we're using quite small quantities here. I'm terrible for making too much stuffing, but if you do that, you can always put it in a little ramekin and cook it anyway. You've got some extra goodness for your meal. Next, we need to add some kind of breadcrumb in order to soak up some of the juices and keep everything together. Now, I happen to have these Panko breadcrumbs in my cupboard. I often use these for making some panko tofu. Again, let me know if you want that recipe. You'll probably just want about a tablespoon per mushroom. You can always crumble the bread that you have in the cupboard. When I first started making stuffed mushrooms years ago, I always had those little oat cakes in my pantry. So if you've got some kind of savoury cracker, you could put that in as well. And that's our next ingredient. Next, we're going to add some fresh and preserved vegetables. So I've got a couple of spring onions here. I've got a feeling you call these green onions, or are they scallions in the US? I'll look that up before I write the recipe in the video description. But honestly, there are so many things you can add at this stage. I'm going to give you loads more options down in that video description. I often, for example, use fresh tomatoes. Be careful of anything that's too watery. So if you are using fresh tomatoes, just a small amount. So I've got my garlic here and my spring onions. Let's pop that in. I've always got a few things in the fridge. I've got these pitted olives. I'm going to add a little of this. And I've always got a few of these preserved vegetables in oil. So I've got my sun-dried tomatoes here. And using things like this means we don't have to add any extra oil to the recipe either. So I'm going to grab a couple of these. Now, one thing I discovered years ago, these kept going mouldy in the fridge, and I realised that it's because of picking them out with my fingers. And even though I'd washed my hands, you can still introduce bacteria. So I love this little pickle fork that stops that from happening. And you can do the dried, sun-dried tomatoes as well. You don't have to use the ones in oil. I like the ones in oil because you always get some oil left over for cooking as well, which is fun and adds extra flavour to things. And we're going to pop these in as well. I was about to go on to the next step, but then I remembered I had some red peppers in the fridge that I'm about to prepare to go into the freezer. I've recently got a brand new freezer. It's actually an early Christmas present from my mother, and I'm thinking of doing a video about filling it up because I had to really take my freezer down to almost nothing. I've got a tiny built-in freezer in the kitchen and I need to do lots of recipes to fill it up. So I think what I'm going to do is a video of all the things you can put in a vegan plant-based freezer. But of course, you don't need to be plant-based to enjoy this recipe. We're on to the next stage, and that will be a paste. So at this stage, we want some kind of paste in there to hold everything together. And there are so many things you can use. I'm going to use this sun-dried tomato paste. You could also use a vegan cream cheese. You could use some hummus. You could use some pate or some pesto sauce. I'll put a full list of options down in the video description. This has got quite a lot of oil because it's been sitting, so I'm going to sort of pull this up and avoid some of that oil on the top, so we have enough in our recipe already, and probably adding a tablespoon or two to our mix. Next up, we just need to season before we stir. So at this point, you can add some fresh herbs. I've got some coriander here, but I often use parsley. Actually, parsley is very good. I've removed the most woody stems from it because we don't want it to be, unpleasant to eat. Just going to chop that up, pop that in. We'll add some salt and some pepper. And now we are ready to stir. As I said, I will add lots of options for you because this is a choose your own adventure recipe. So I'm going to put all of the options down in the video description so that you can build your own recipe. And this is looking perfect. Now it's time to stuff our mushrooms. So all we're going to do is start off by piling some on top, and we'll start by pressing it down. And you can sometimes as well, if you've got the ones where the skin comes right over, you can sometimes sort of push some in under those skins as well. So you're going to press it down nicely. Now, one finishing touch that you can add if you want to is some cheese or some vegan cheese. I don't have any at the moment. It's something that I try to avoid eating too much of because although I'm not obsessive about it, I do avoid processed foods wherever I can. And occasionally I'll make a little bit of exception for some vegan cheese or some vegan yogurt. But a lot of these products have a great many additives in. So I want to keep it sort of a small part of my diet if possible. But you certainly could grate some on top at this stage. So I'm actually going to save these for later once I've got all of this filling in here. As I said, if you have some left, you can just pop it in a little ramekin and cook it at the same time. I'm going to cover these with some cling film and cook them when I get home from my Tai Chi class later. And I'll show you some footage of how they look when they're done. I'm actually going to serve these with some lime rice that I'd already made for the freezer. I need to make another batch of that lime rice, so I probably will film that as well very soon for this channel. These will take about 20 to 25 minutes in a medium oven. I'll put all the details down below. I would cook these in my fan oven at about 170 or 180, that's centigrade. But I'll put, as I said, the other options in the description of this video. They tend to release a lot of juice when you cut into them, so I like to have them with something that's quite absorbent. My favourite is to have them on a bed of rice, and then all the juices leak out and flavour the rice, and it's delicious. But you could also try them with mashed potato, or even just as a lunch with some wholemeal bread. These are now ready to cook. So I'll drop in some pictures here of these cooking and being served, and they absolutely are delicious. Now, the ones I made in this video were kind of Mediterranean and tomatoey, but don't forget that you can really change this up if you used a pesto, if you used a vegan cream cheese, added some chives, you would get a completely different effect. What about using hummus? That works well too. All of the instructions and a list of as many things as I can think of to add to these are in the video description, and I'm sure you'll make your own as well. Do let me know in the comments if you give these a go, and I'll see you again very soon.